Welcome back to the Football Fitness Federation podcast. This is episode 198. I am delighted to welcome onto the podcast today, Matt Allen. Matt, how are we doing?
Very well, thank you. Cheers for having me, Ben.
No problem, mate. I've said this on loads of podcasts. We needed to have recorded the last sort of 20 minutes of conversation we've had because I think there's some really good stuff in that from you. But we didn't. So we're going to have to try and repeat a little bit of it. But thank you very much for coming on, mate. I appreciate it. It's good timing as well, coming a few episodes after Josh coming on the podcast too. So let's kick us off, as we always do, on you and your background. Can you give us a little rundown?
Yeah, sure. So firstly, yeah, thanks for having me. So I'm head of academy physical performance at Spurs. I'm also the lead physical person with the women's team as well at Tottenham, that I kind of oversee that program. But that's only in the last 12 months or so. So if I kind of rewind the clock, I guess, oh, God knows how many years now. So I went to uni 2004. Just before that, I used to play football, not to a great standard. Failed footballer like some sports scientists are. I was at Norwich for a while, got released from there. I actually then took up golf when I was 12. Got very good at it. Tried to make it on tour. Realised I wasn't good enough to do that one either. I gave it a go, but realised I weren't good enough for that. Then decided, let's go to uni and let's try and get into the sport that I love. Whether obviously football was the main goal, but I did have a background also in golf. But yeah, I thought I'd go to uni, study sports science, obviously a broad topic, and it allowed me to kind of narrow down on what I could specialise in at a later date. Went to Nottingham Trent for 3 years, got my degree, did a little bit of experience at different places in sports during that degree. Then stayed on, did a master's. While I did my master's, I was working with Ryland Morgans at Nottingham Forest. So that was 2007-8 season when we were in League One and got promoted, which was great. It was a really good year. Learned loads from Ryland, from the environment. Really, really useful year pairing up with my studies. Like most people, get to the end of your masters, you go back home to mummy and daddy, where you get some free food and everything. So yeah, went back there, managed to get a role through David Cosford and Nigel Thompson at Elite Strength and Conditioning in Norwich. So you might hear my Norfolk twang as we go on, but yeah, I'm originally from there. So managed to work with athletes across 20 different sports while I was there. So it's almost like an S&C centre where people come into you from all different areas and different specialisms in the area. So work with triathletes and rugby players and football players and golfers, etc., which I found really, really, really useful for my development as a strength and conditioning coach, but also obviously a sports scientist. I then found those skills were really transferable when I managed to get my role at Tottenham. So I moved to Tottenham, moved to the area, but managed to get my job at Tottenham as an intern in late 2009 with Sam Erith and Nathan Gardner. Worked with the first team for 6 months, and Sam and Wayne Diesel, etc. Then they got me my job within the academy, and I found that I absolutely loved it. If I'm completely honest with you, when I first got the role, my goal was to work with first team players. I really enjoyed it with the first team, but they offered me this job, and I thought, I'll never turn down a job with Tottenham. Absolutely no way. So I started working with them in May 2010. Went on a few tours with Alex Inglethorpe, John McDermott. Worked with those. Alex obviously now at Liverpool as the academy director. Went away with Anton McElhone, who's head of sports science at Celtic, and absolutely loved it. Like, to be fair, the crop that I worked with were unbelievable. Like this group I went away with in April or May, it was like Harry Kane, Ryan Mason, Tom Carroll, etc. Paul and Poku. Like we had a really, really good crop, and just fell in love with it really, with kind of long-term athlete development, whatever you want to call it. And so I've been in that role now ever since, really. So since mid 2010, I've been head of academy physical development for so many years. Recently changed to with performance in the title, but I've been fortunate enough to work with players like Oliver Skip since he was knee high, like 9-year-old. I got pictures of him in my sessions that probably weren't that great. I was motivated and delivering with great enthusiasm, but actually looking at the drills, they weren't very good. But that was back in, when he was 8-9 years old. And Jaffat Tanganga, like currently Dane Scarlett, and then I was lucky enough to cling onto the coattails of some of the players that I mentioned there, with regards to Andros Townsend, Nabil Bentaleb, and all that all come through, which I've been really fortunate to be a really small part of their journey. That's a kind of I would say a whistle stop tour. That was about 10 minutes, I think. But yeah, that's where I am. That's where I've been. I could go on and on, but I'll leave it there and let you ask some more questions.
And then the other side of it is obviously the women's game now as well.
Yeah, so obviously the Euros are going on at the moment, which is incredible. That you can see that it's gaining, building steam. Really, that side of the sport is year on year. So I got the opportunity to get involved last year through Heather and through Rianne, the managers, the management team here. Heather being the head of women's football and Rianne being the manager. And they wanted me involved, which is brilliant. So I've done that now for just over 12 months. Big challenge. Even at the start of last season, we were operating at a Mill Hill school, which is in London, and then we moved to the Birch, which is literally just down the way, while a new purpose-built facility, which I'm in right now, while it got built, which like just in 12 months, the scenery has changed so much. They've got their own unbelievable pitches outside. I managed to design them a gym and get them a gym installed through it with Indigo Fitness. We managed to get loads of things put in last year that is great, and I think it just shows just how much that's growing, and it's actually a really exciting side of the sport that I'm really lucky to be a part of. I don't deliver in the program. I just kind of oversee it, the strategy side and what we do, where we push, what days we push hard on, what days we come off, recovery strategies, all that kind of performance side. So like people like Pordy going across, I think gives real credibility and gravitas to the women's side of the sport. And I think this it's genuinely a really exciting side to be involved in as well. So that's kind of a bolt onto my role. My main job is still in the academy and what I like to see, where I see my future as well. But it's certainly one that it'd be incredible to see where we are in 5, 6, 7 years time with the speed it's developing at.
We spoke before we started recording. One of the things we spoke about was your sort of passion in terms of seeing players go through the academy process into first team, thriving at first team level. There's obviously a lot of people, and when you speak to a lot of younger practitioners, they always have the ambition, or it seems majority, of working at first team. What's been the real draw for you to stay in the academy and keep working with these younger players?
I think you've got to be really highly skilled to work in academy football, and I'm not saying, because obviously I can now bang the drum of academy football, and it's not at the detriment whatsoever to first team side, and that is incredibly demanding. You've got some very highly skilled people in that, and you have to be highly skilled, to work in that environment. But at the same time, I feel like the qualities you have to bring to an academy environment are much more than quantifiable numbers and sports science and technology and all that. It's very much about how can you develop this 9-year-old and give them the qualities of having grit, determination, and mental strength, and all the physical qualities, of course. But I'm very much under the impression that, of course, my title is about physical performance, but at the same time, John McDermott had a great kind of saying for everyone, and everyone is a player developer. So we need to make sure that everyone in the building is aligned, because this is the environment that we have to create and maintain, whether you're the bus driver, the person who brings them in from their digs, the sports scientist or the psychologist, we're all of each other's roles, because we're trying to harness this environment to bring through each player. And I think there's a big skill in that, and you can make or break careers by doing things right or wrong, in my opinion. And I think that side of it is what I really thrive on. And I think from the other side, I kind of see myself, I've always seen myself really as a kind of a strength and conditioning coach in football. That's kind of how I've really seen it. I really love getting people to jump higher, getting people to sprint faster, making people more agile, making people fitter. And I think it's that side that when you have a Saturday kind of routine, of course you do have that in first team football as well, but to really see a lad develop physically, their qualities over time as well, I'm all over that. That's me. My biggest day is testing day. It's not match day. It's testing day. So I think it kind of a few different reasons really.
And those demands, another thing we touched on before, was the demands that players are facing now on the pitch, away from the pitch, that perhaps weren't happening as much a few years ago. How's that influenced your approach and maybe just conversations that you're having with players as well?
It's become a lot more complicated, I'd say, in the last 12 years since I've been doing this. I think things were very simple before. I think the environment that we now operate in, there is a job for every area, and things like safeguarding, psychologists, we've got like specialties in every area, which is great to an extent. But at the end of the road, we had to prepare Oliver Skip to potentially get booed at by 30,000 people, or he goes to take a corner and he gets stuff thrown at him and shouted at him, or the manager doesn't like what he did at half time, so he says whatever at half time. I think that you have to develop players for a really demanding sport now, both on and off the pitch. Like, even if you think you've had a good game, you could go on Twitter after, or Instagram, and you could probably and you could type your name in, I imagine, and you could find 100 people that think otherwise. And I think you've got to have some really mentally strong and stable people to deal with that, I think. And so of course you need that support network around, but at the same time, for moments like that, and at the same time we need to find the balance between not treating kids like young adults, like they are small adults. We have to make sure that we harness an environment in this place that still develops those qualities, that still develops grit, mental strength, of course all the physical qualities, but we need to push players to really get them to kick on, but also prepare them for what's going to happen, and what the next level is, what the end level is. So no, it's like I say, it's certainly changed in the last 12 years. I wouldn't say better, I wouldn't say worse. It's just definitely changed. And I think it's certainly an area that everyone's adapting to. But the end game is still the same. You're still playing this in front of 60,000 people, and people will shout things. We need to make sure that players are ready for this.
Is it also where you might pull from coaches' experience that have maybe played at that level as well, that you have around the club, or even current first team players as well?
I think so. I think, like, just in our coaching, we counted up all the appearances that we had in the coaching staff had in the academy, and I think we had over like 2,000 appearances. To be fair, we've got Pat Jennings, who's like 1,000. He counts for quite a lot. I think it was in the thousands, like how many appearances we had. And I feel like some people can say, "Oh, you're old school," but actually, if harnessed and put across with the right message, it's not old school. The game is still the game, and the stresses and and what the game brings hasn't really changed too much over the years. So we need to make sure that the staff in this environment are highly skilled, but also have the experiences to really relate to players. And I think it's how that relatedness and those relationships that you build. We need to make sure that we give the right message, but also collectively we have the same message.
Yeah.
I think it's right that we need to make sure that, as much as having a relationship, I think it's a dangerous word with players, that we need to be critical friends. So we're not just cheerleader friends. We're not just, oh, well done, pat on the back, everything. We need to, of course, build respect through what we deliver. But at the same time, we need to have those relationships that we tell players what they need to hear, not what they want to hear, but delivered at the right time with the right message, and in the right stage. And I think that then becomes powerful. And so, as long as we all collectively are critical friends, so we all got great relationships, but we've got to be honest that sometimes that's not good enough. Come on, we've got to be better than that. You've got to be better than that. And we've seen patterns in you recently. You've got to improve at this, and this. Of course, that side, but also be positive at the same time. When something happens that you've been working on, praise it, 100% praise it. And so, yeah, that kind of side as well.
And then I was going to ask about engaging players throughout the sort of academy process, LTAD. If we're going to talk about buy-in or however we want to phrase it, but essentially the attitude of players towards S&C sports science. Obviously, you've named players that have gone right through the academy system. What's been your approach, especially earlier on in that academy process, making sure that players understand why they're doing what they're doing, and then kind of thrive doing that as well and want to progress?
So this is my Twitter kind of thing that you put at the end of your title, like views my own and not the club. So everything, to be fair, that I'm discussing are just kind of my thoughts, really. And genuinely not that, and that is genuinely not of the club. But what we do here is we've got kind of a saying in the gym of bringing the outside inside. So I don't want players to view, right, I've got football, then I've got the gym, or the other way around. I want it to kind of be synonymous. I want players to view being inside is like, you are working on the qualities that transfer to outside. So we've got that saying in our gym of bringing the outside inside. So we'll always have videos going on in the gym, on the pitch, of players playing on the pitch where they might be physically outstanding moments where they might need to work on, some highlights of the week, whatever it is. We need to make sure that it becomes a football environment. We'll then do work on the outside inside. So we'll film speed drills. We'll film possessions and then highlight a player on how he turns, etc. And then we'll actually bring that inside. So the start of our movement development sessions, we'll put it on the screen, get the players around. Right, okay, so this is your speed drill. Have a look at how you hip extend. Look at how you've changed it. Look at your foot patterns here and there. Right, we're going to bring that. Okay, this is what we're now about to work on inside. So there, you've taken 4 steps to change direction. We're going to now work on this and change in 2 or 3 steps instead, or whatever the example may be. So we want to bring as much of the outside inside as possible and work on that. So another example might be the language that we use. So with our younger age groups, we will use rotational stability. We'll have an example of our lads doing like Zidane work. So that's basically like twisting and turning and using your body to be really strong while you're twisting and turning. Right, that's just Zidane work that you do outside. Okay, now we're going to work on the things that regress from that. Okay, right, everybody, this is exercise number 1. This is rotational hold. So you're going to get really, really strong without moving isometrically. So like hold it still. And so actually like intro in a session and then making things football throughout the whole thing, but you're not actually kicking a football, I think makes people buy into the process a bit more. And of course, if you've got more buy-in, then you're going to get better, effort levels, etc. throughout. That's one side of things. The other side is in competition. I think it's good old competition. You can never go wrong with that. Leaderboards galore, like everywhere. If we can get I'm a big person on push. I know they've been brought out recently and stuff, but velocity-based training where we can get leaderboards going on screens. The VALD leaderboard we'll always have up in the gym on power sessions. We'll have prowler speed as one of our kind of key exercises in power, where we're pushing the prowler through light gates, 5 meter light gates, and we get the time, write it on the leaderboard, etc.
Yeah,
I'm a big believer that lads, when they jump higher over the course of a season, largely it's because also they're getting better at jumping, they're getting better at the techniques, they're doing it a lot. So why don't we just take that same thing to sprint work? So we do resistor speed, do loads of speed work, and obviously get quicker. But that's a kind of a overview of kind of how we see things, and we want to make things as relatable as possible inside. And the last one, sorry, is how we then link the day together. So, for example, I work with Wayne Burnett kind of day in, day out, and so with Josh as well. But Wayne Burnett is the head coach of the 23s or 21s now. We'll sit down in the morning meeting, MDT, right? What we're going to do, agree what drills we're going to do that day, like as an overview, right? Okay, so the first drill is going to be twisting and turning. We use the same example. Okay, so we'll then bring that into the gym and work on that. Right, we're going to build out to this today, out onto the pitch. So we're going to regress that into the gym. So this is what we're going to do first: rotational core on the floor, etc. Stand up and do that. So there are kind of 3 things that we'll work on. It'll be like, what is the content for the pitch on the day? Who have we got and what do they need? Of course, we need to make it individual, but also where are we in our periodization model? So we've got our periodized model that will progress throughout the season. And so as a gym kind of program, that's kind of where we are. But we get our focus is really on huge buy-in through making it all relatable to the pitch.
Brilliant. I bet you have to be wary now, don't you, on how early you go using players like Zidane. Do you get any blank looks of players going, who's that?
Oh, they all know who Zidane is. Everyone knows who Zidane is. Yeah. I guess with that though, that is just football language in the building. So now, like, there's also a term of Winksy. So Harry Winks, like I worked with Harry since he was 14, and incredible ability to twist and turn, and it's almost like football language in the building. So we as sports scientists, SSC coach, whatever we are, whatever the football language in the building of what the coaches use, we need to make sure that we bring that as well. We're not trying to be coaches in the gym, but we need to have that same kind of language. And so if the coaches call it Zidane work, that's what we call it, you know. And so it makes it all link.
Yeah, 100%. Where do you stand on when we've got players? We've talked about like super strengths on the podcast before. Like if a player's got incredible speed or strength, whatever it is, that's like their strength, their super strength. Obviously, there's then areas that they need to work on as well. Where would your priority fit in terms of improving on their strengths, making them even better, or bringing up weaknesses, or does it just depend?
I think I'm probably going to give you a whole lot of grey now. I think it very much depends on the individual and their stage of growth. So if we find a weakness could be a deciding factor on whether they actually stay fit or not, then of course we'll work on that weakness. So say a lad's going through their peak height velocity and we found a key area that might he may eventually pull out of training, then obviously we need to work on that weakness. If so, in the bigger picture, so someone like Carl Walker-Peters is a great example, one of the most agile players I've ever worked with. So that's his strength. I want to make him ridiculously agile, so I'm going to keep working on that strength. But then also, we need to work on the underpinning stuff that kind of harnesses that agility, if you get what I mean. So how does he move? Of course, if we can improve his foot patterns and everything, etc., then great. But if it's down to hip extension technique or whatever it is and really slowing it down, and we can harness that and improve his agility through anything that might be a weakness of it. So a great example might be with people like Shiloh Tracy or Ryan Fredericks. Ryan Fredericks, I think, just signed for Bournemouth. Unbelievably fast, but we need to make sure that we give them the qualities and the strength and everything that goes with it to really anchor that speed. So it's almost like working on your strength, but also focus on the weaknesses to harness that. So we obviously want to make sure that players all have super strength. So if you're good at everything, likely you're not going to have a career, or you're not going to have as good of a career as you could do. So of course we need to make sure everyone's got this super strength, whatever it is, whether it be physical or mental or whatever. We need to focus on giving them that super strength. And so anything we can do to enhance it, the better, but also anything that we can do to kind of bolster that strength, the better as well. If that answers that.
Yeah, 100%. No, it does. That's awesome. I was going to ask as well, because when I was thinking about this podcast, we've spoke a lot about, from both sides, club and country, some people that are working with national teams, some people working at clubs where their players will go off on international duty. We haven't spoke about it from an academy perspective. And I know yourselves at the club, you have players that are off on international duty in the academy. How do you find that when players are going away? Is it the same as the first team in terms of it's all around the relationship with yourselves and the national team staff, or is there anything else you need to do additionally because these players are going through different levels of growth?
I feel like a lot of it will be very similar. Maybe the topics might be slightly different. I think whenever we hand over players, like first team players to England or international teams, it comes with, right, here's his loading. He's recently had an ankle injury. So he's got this in his program that he covers. So I think that it will be similar where we personally hand over under 15, 16 programming. We'll work with England and other nationalities other nations, to hand over sessions and loadings and everything that will come with caveats of he's going through his growth spurt at the moment. He's going through his peak height velocity. So monitoring his load, he doesn't do or has never done 3 days on the spin, let's say as an example. So I think that's important that the dialogue is there. We've got some nations that we deal with that the dialogue isn't quite there, whether that be language barriers, and even on the women's side as well, whether that be a language issue, or whether that be they haven't got the setup or the structure or the funding or whatever it is to have a likewise department working with the players as we have. So the access to GPS data, it may even be missing. So I think a lot of it is very, very similar from my experience of being around first team, being in the same room as first team staff when they're handing over things. I think it's just really important to have a good relationship with that governing body. Does that mean they come in to the training center? I guess obviously it depends on what nation it is, but having those ties before players go away, I think is really important. And this building and every building runs 100 million miles an hour. And then as soon as international break comes round, it almost comes up too quickly. And then, right, quick, I've got to send out this message to them. I've got to send out the load-ins and all. And it can become a last minute thing. So trying to be proactive, getting those ties, getting those links, making people aware of where they are in their stages of growth, but also assigning somebody in your department to managing that, I think is really important. And so then it gives them the best chance when they go away to succeed.
Yeah, bro. And then onto monitoring. We've spoke again, it's a topic that gets talked about a lot. With your approach to that, where does your focus lie throughout the academy? But also, I know you wanted to touch on some things that just can't be monitored as well.
So we had so even with the 23, so let's use an example 2 years ago. So I found with all the injuries that we had in our under 23 age group, I believe there's only 3 injuries in that whole season that linked to loading, because I was so on the loading, like everything they were doing. But so I made sure that everything got communicated to the head coach, and we managed to stop injuries happening, etc. But a lot of it wasn't to do with the loading. A lot of the things that happened were things that you can't really measure. And so what I find is really useful. We're still on Excel. Like I'd like to get away and get away from it and go Power BI and all that kind of stuff, and use performance platforms and everything. We're still using Excel. We have outputs. Every player has a player card. So it's not a loading card. I hate the word loading, but it's a player card that kind of encompasses everything really. So on this player card, you've got distance, accels, decels, all that for each day, and it all layers down. But then 2 of the cells on there are habits and behavior and player observations. So if a lad, I saw him stretch his hamstring, his right hamstring, it'll show nothing on GPS. Then we make a note of it. And so we get things to flag up. They go out straight after training. The physio gets a buzz essentially from that. And then you can have a chat with him about it and things like that. So trying to quantify all of the numbers. And so we kind of have that in shorthand. So that will all pop up onto there. And it's not just about issues. It might also be about, so something that we've been working on. We've been working on speed off the mark. They just burst past somebody, use their arm. A great example for the gym where we might player observations might go in there. And so you can use it for positive reinforcement as well. And habits and behaviors, like obviously we're in long-term development. We need to make sure that players have the qualities and the habits to make it. So what I'm looking for are habits that happen time and time again. So say somebody's dehydrated, they have a high osmo. That might only happen once every 2 months for that player. Whereas another person, they might have had a high osmo, forgotten their bottle, left it inside, then didn't drink after training, didn't collect their bottle before training, whatever it is. And then the following day, they pulled their hamstring or saw them stretching their hamstring. So that will all go on shorthand. So on the GPS data, I won't say anything, but I think with notes and things that you can't actually quantify, I think there we've got a really good picture of where this player's at. And I haven't even looked at GPS data. The GPS data will show me absolutely nothing whatsoever. So things that you kind of can't measure, I think, is really important, especially in player development, whether that be for good and bad. So the importance of kind of identifying these habits that players have. It might be high muscle soreness and everything, but you know, but we get a log of it and we can see trends. I'm really big on the kind of importance of events as well. So one of the biggest things I've found over the years I've been doing it is to really change somebody's habits and behavior. You have to have an event. So I can tell them, a player, right, it's not like that on they won't like it on loan if you're late to a meeting, and you know you lose your space in the squad, etc., and like, yeah, of course, Matt, no worries, yeah. Or you got to put on a bit of weight because the industry needs you to be heavier. The market suggests you've got to be 70 kilos to play in that position, where you're only 63, and like, yeah, of course, Matt, no worries, I'll get eating. But what they do is, then that person that goes up, trains with the first team, gets absolutely ragdolled, thrown to the floor, everything, can't handle it. You then have to pick your moments so that's an event that's happened there, right? Sit down with you, right? Let's go through that. So you've just been, you just experienced that in the first team. I've been telling you to eat, right? This is our moment. We've got nutritionists here. We've got everything here. We're here to help you. Let's get some kilos on you. I think that's really important that you get these events, and then you can use it to harness into good things to change people's habits and behavior and all that. And I use the example of a high osmo. If somebody did pull their hamstring, it's like, well, here you go. Here's your last week. Your last week is you forgot your bottle, didn't bring it out to training. The next day you were dehydrated. The next day you didn't have any pre-match or post-match. The next day you didn't eat breakfast or whatever it is. And now you pulled your hamstring. I think using that is an important thing to really influence the psyche of a player, and the critical friend kind of thing that I covered earlier, really, of using that. And so I know I've gone on a little bit about that there, but I think players aren't quantifiable robots, and so the more we can bring the softer side, but also the other side of development, and using the kind of social and emotional intelligence of when to influence a player, the better. I guess I got one more example thinking about it. I mentioned to you before, just before we come on live, like the class of '93. So good example. The program's a program. So the players had to find a way to deal with that program, because there's no sports scientist saying his muscle soreness is high or whatever it is, or he didn't sleep much last night. You had to find a way to deal with it. So now let's say we've got God knows how many sports scientists in whatever club we're in at the moment. a player plays on Saturday, goes out, drinks loads in the evening on Saturday after playing quite well, doesn't rehydrate, eats poor food on Sunday, doesn't sleep much. He comes in on Monday, sore as hell. Dom's a 7 out of 10. His sleep quality is 2 out of 10. His sleep hours are 3 hours. And you're like, you go to the head coach, right? We need to come off this lad. He's overtrained or whatever it is, and we keep him fit. And so great, we've got 100% availability. Well done, us. That's brilliant. The player stays fit, but the player doesn't learn. The player doesn't learn from his mistake there, and so actually building these habits and behaviors is quite tough. And sometimes, having injuries isn't necessarily a bad thing, because it is then an event that you can then influence this player on in the future.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's great, because it does feed back to them, doesn't it, on the whole picture on what's happening and potentially why it's happening as well. How easy is that to do across a squad though, when you've got plenty of numbers?
Quite easy, really. As long as we've got those player cards each day, I think you've got, well, in all category one in the world that I'm living in at the moment, we've got sports scientists or S&C coaches for each age group. Not all the way down to nines, but we've got, for the PDP especially, we have people specializing in that. And so if you're overseeing 20 players, I think it's worth every day having a consideration for what has a player done, where is he in his development, what are his habits, what's he like at the moment, what's going on at home, etc. And so I've got a clipboard every day, and I know what I've got for training every day. I know what numbers I've got, but I have a habit of ticking their name every day. Right, is he training? Yes. Okay, then I go on to the next name. Yes, tick their name. And so it makes me sit there and consider every player every day in the morning before I go into meetings, etc. Right, what has that player done? How is he? What's his player card saying, etc. And I feel like if you can you have that headspace just for 10 minutes just to go through the squad, and then you know how to then deal with them in the day, not just for programming, but also the mood you are around them. What have they, what's going on? You might know something now about what's going on at home, so you might change the way you are, or change your session slightly based on that. That's key as well.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Matt, let's move on to some of the quick fire that we finished the podcast with, just to wrap things up. So the first one I always ask is, who have been some of the biggest influences on your career so far?
Sam Erith and Nathan Gardner spring to mind from a sports science perspective. They're the ones that brought me into Spurs. Nathan Gardner, I must have spent hour and a half with every day for about 4 years. He was brilliant to bounce off, loads of ideas that he kind of helped me with in the academy. Another one that actually springs to mind is somebody who I work with who actually is in my department, Carl Hallerby, an incredible practitioner, person, unbelievable experiences, encyclopedic knowledge of everything in football fitness and how to use all those kind of unquantifiable, immeasurable things that we've just been talking about. And he's been really good with me. John McDermott is the go-to. So in player development, he's like the godfather. Obviously he's now he's at the FA now, but I was lucky enough to work with him for 10 years or so. And 10 years with John is, I stick by it. It's like 15 elsewhere. He was just outstanding for me. He pushed me every day. The amount of conversations we have at 10 p.m. still happens, where he's quizzing me and what are you doing here and what's happening there. And he's brilliant. Coaching wise, under that, biggest influences because I've learned so much, obviously, because we're trying to relate and work with these coaches every day. I mean, like Wayne Burnett, I've worked with now for 5 years. The way we link gym to training and everything, I think is great. Alex Inglethorpe, Kieran McKenna, who's now Ipswich manager, Matt Wells, who's at Bournemouth. But actually, a big influence on me was Ugo Ekiog as well. 5 years ago now, it just here I've got goosebumps now just bringing up his name. And yeah, very, 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 very sad. But what a great guy, and what a great loss to not only football but just society and everything. But yeah, I've been really, really lucky people will find me out soon. But yeah, I'm really lucky to work with so many people. I'm dropping names for fun. Sorry, it's not me at all. Sorry, man.
I did ask that, to be fair. I did ask that.
Okay, yeah.
Matt, what would you say your biggest strength is as a practitioner?
I'd probably say my social and emotional intelligence is, my antennas for that are pretty good. Knowing when to push hard, when to come off players and staff. I think a big part of we have interns every year, and we've had them now for well, I came in as an intern, so yeah, every year. And I know that at some point in their internship, they're struggling, and the work is getting a bit too much. And it's that tipping point of like, I've always got my eye on them, but at the same time, I know they need to go through this to then get out the other side and really feel like a true feel of football and being under the cosh a little bit and everything. And I know kind of when to push the pedal down and when to come off, but at the same time, with staff and for players. So I like to think I've been pretty good at developing staff in the time I've been here, as well as developing players. And I guess the kind of emotional and social intelligence around that, in developing that, I think is probably my biggest strength.
Real. What would be your top bit of advice if Matt, that was just starting out, the very start of his career, when he tried golf and all the rest of it, getting into sports science? What would you say to him back then?
What would I say to him back then? Find a way for your CV to stand out. I put job adverts out, and instantly, if it goes national, it's 500 people to go for it. So what would make you stand out? I'd just get myself to contact as many different clubs as possible, to get experience wherever I can. I think one of the biggest values I've had in my development, to get where I am, I'm still developing. I'm as humble as anyone. Like I'm as an open book as I ever have been. But when I was really younger, going through S&C, working at that centre, the things I bought from working with different sports is still true now, because it really brings the value of, right, you've got this individual and I've got to get him better at X, Y, and Z. And he is so different to this guy over here, but he's in the same session. And so I think the value of actually just spreading your wings, even though you might want to work in football, contacting people in golf and tennis and multi-sport centres and all that, and just getting yourself on the shop floor, watching people coach yourself, I think is invaluable. We actually played Bromley last night, and there's no disrespect to Bromley whatsoever at all. But I mean, the setup they've got there is incredible, and the people there are incredible, and the experience people will get working there is it just completely invaluable. So I'm, like I say, I'm not disrespecting that whatsoever, but don't have any shackles in anything. Any experience you can get it. And I think that's one of the stuff I'd say.
Yeah, great advice. And then just finally, mate, you just said about continually developing. What's your approach like CPD, continued learning right now?
During COVID, it was tough, obviously. Funding went down, conferences went down, etc. Obviously online it went up, but one of the biggest things I have is in my department, I will employ people that are much better at me at certain areas. So everybody, like Josh, he absolutely would, like if I got in a science off with Josh, like I'm losing. Like he's almost encyclopedic with everything kind of football science wise. And then I've got Adrian van der Plug, who's my S&C coach. Likewise, like I can't even get in conversation with him about functional anatomy and biomechanics, etc., because he's outstanding at it. And so I think the key thing of that is actually having an environment where it's rich in that area. And so what I did in the last 2 years is we've had different topics, and I've everybody put together 4 presentations on videos in my department and upload it to a Dropbox folder. 2 things that we do and 2 things that we could do. And so each one being like a TED Talks, 18 minutes, maximum 18 minutes, something that they feel like, yeah, we could do, and also things that reinforce what we do. And that has been really, really valuable. We've now got a folder of maybe 60, 70 different video files in-house CPD, but also loads of different presentation files, and set in any area in football science, or whether it be an day in the life in the day of an intern, so then we can hand over to new interns, etc. Our CPD folder on there is really, really good. And so we've tried to be creative with how we've done our CPD. Obviously, conferences, etc., are now starting again, which is great. But I think we're going to keep that going, and using people around you that give people a platform just to show what they're good at, And I think everybody, I learn every day from everyone I work with. I'm very, very lucky.
I love that. And I think it's really valuable, isn't it, for anyone listening, to make sure you're making the most of the people around you, because I think some people not take for granted, but doing tasks like that, it challenges people in a good way, doesn't it? And it allows you to learn off each other. So, mate, that was absolutely quality. Really, really good. Thank you very much for coming on and doing it. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. No, thank you.
Really, where would you, for people to keep up to date with what you got going on, Matt, would you direct them to any sort of socials or anything?
My Twitter is, I believe, Matt Allen Sports Science, SPSCI, and Matt Allen Sport. Matt Allen Sport. I think it is that. So I don't know. It's something like that. If you type that in, I guess you'll come up with someone like, you come up with my picture.
It'll be a Matt Allen anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you just make friends with whatever Matt Allen you come up with. Come up against. So yeah, there I guess is the main one. Obviously, LinkedIn is the other one that I'm on. But if you contact me, I'll always endeavour to get back to anyone. Likewise, I contact other people, and I try and use it. I'm more of a background kind of user of Twitter than I am on the front of it. But feel free to contact me, and please don't get offended if it takes me a while to get back to you. But all good.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Matt.
Cheers. Thanks, Ben.